Welcome to Leading with Curiosity. Command and control leadership is dead. We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches challenging old paradigms and fostering cutting-edge leadership. Here's your host, certified executive coach, Nate Leslie.
Hey listeners, welcome to Leading with Curiosity. My guest today, Ira Wolfe, is a thought leader in the future of work. He is a top 5 global thought leader on HR, TEDx speaker, and an HR influencer. We explore the connection between a Bruce Lee quote and growth mindset. We learn the number one skill that will be required in today's workplace in these crazy sort of post-pandemic times. I know, like always, I'm going to have to have a guy like Ira on the show again. So much we could have explored and didn't get to. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did recording it. Ira Wolfe, welcome to Leading with Curiosity.
Hey, thanks very much, Nate. It's great to be here.
You know, I've been doing a lot of research, and you are a leader, a thought leader around the future of work, adaptability in a post-pandemic era, modern leadership in 2022. What are you thinking about these days around the future of work in these times that we're living in?
I think a lot about it for very obvious reasons. We're living in what I call the never normal, and the never normal is it's a pretty good description of where we are. It started with VUCA. I don't know if your listeners may or may not be familiar with that, but VUCA's been around for about 40 years. It started with Warren Bennis in the 1980s. He was one of my favorite thought leaders on leadership. And he talked about what the future was going to be, how you needed to prepare leaders and develop leaders, which I know is what you do.
Yeah.
And he talked about a world that would be volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I can't think of a better acronym than VUCA to describe the world we live in now, but especially in 2020, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And every day we continue to live there. So basically, having studied that being a passion of mine for the last, I've always liked studying change, but especially over the last 20 years when I was introduced to that, here's my time. This is the time to live in, for that. And people are really struggling. I mean, you can tell from that, from stress and burnout and well-being and people changing jobs and what the work environment is. There's so much going on. Again, we need to talk about how do we help people adapt better.
Yeah,
so I do that every day.
Yeah. Let's go there. Gosh, when you think about VUCA being from the 80s and now how uncertain and ambiguous this next chapter in our lives is, helping people be adaptive. You've talked about the adaptability quotient. What do you want to share about that?
Well, it's part of a solution. It's a tool, and it's not, I like the framework of it, but in pursuit of looking for something that could help people, how do we know if somebody's adaptable? What are the components to adaptability? Again, you're a coach. What tools, what skills do people need to know? And again, people confuse flexibility with adaptability all the time as well. And people say, well, I'm really flexible, but being flexible means that you're reactive. You're waiting for something to happen. And things change so quickly these days. They're so volatile that we need to have a plan. We need to be proactive. We need to become better at it. We need to understand that we can't just say, well, I'm willing to go with, we'll go with the flow, whatever happens. Well, we got flow coming in from the right and from the left and the top and the bottom. It's coming in from all over the place, and people are either paralyzed or pummeled, one way or the other, where we need to say, how do we react? How do we respond? Not react, but how do we respond better in a situation like that? I heard this quote just about 2 years ago. I wasn't a big fan of his. I mean, I grew up with him, Bruce Lee, martial artist, and he had a quote, and he talked about, be water, my friend. And I didn't understand it at first. And then I started to dig into it. And the metaphor that he used is just tremendous, because if we think about one is water being poured into a container, it could be poured into a drinking glass or a bottle or a pail or a martini glass or a shot glass or a juice glass. And the water takes the shape of whatever that container is, which is really a description of flexibility. That's what we talked about. Mm-hmm. But it also has multiple states, and it responds to the temperature. So it could be gas, liquid, or solid. It also can be dripping out of a faucet, or it can be gushing over a falls. And so we need to be like water. And the question is how do we become water? Because the container that we live in, this world, this never normal world that we live in, it's not going to be fixed. Is one moment, it may be this big pail, and the next moment it's more of a shot glass, and the next moment it's more of a drinking glass, and the next moment it's a bottle. And that's the challenge that we have, that the container we used to live in was very predictable. And even if we didn't like it, even if we're starting to break down and change shapes a little bit, maybe the corners were being rounded or there was a little bit of a leak, our lifespan was able to extend throughout that single container that we had. And people said, well, I hate change and I'm too old to do this and I'm nearing retirement or, there's just no place to go for me, or I don't want to go back to school, whatever excuses that they had, you were able to get away with that. But life is changing so fast now. McKinsey talked about we're experiencing almost 3,000 years of change, or 3 times the impact of change over the next 10 years than we did in the previous 100 years. And there's a lot of analogies like that. Ray Kurzweil talked about we're going to experience 20,000 years of change in the next 100 years. Whoever is right, whatever that exact number is, doesn't really matter. It's just going to change faster. So the challenge is the container, our environments that we live in are going to change. We don't have that luxury to say, I'll just wait to see what happens.
Wow. I'm going to challenge you and I here, Ira, to hang on to this water metaphor for the duration of our conversation. In coaching, when someone offers a metaphor, it's like top shelf poetry. It's as visual a language as leaders can use when they're talking about their situation. When you were talking about people saying, I'll just go with the flow, and you were talking about change coming from all directions, I was literally thinking of, okay, you're like a rudderless ship, you're just floating in water, and then you just started to describe the container around the water. I think that's just really a real strong metaphor for me, and I would like to kind of frame the rest of our conversation around that. The adaptability, it still has constraints. There's correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing the type of container that we're in, whether we're a gas, liquid, or solid, there are parameters, and we can't just go with the flow. There's a level of preparation, I don't know if we can predict what's next, but there's a level of being ready for what's next versus being blindsided by it. Is that?
Yeah, that's interesting. No, absolutely. And I appreciate you expanding on that metaphor, because it helps me. Again, it's all about storytelling, and it helps share a different story. So the container is constantly evolving. So there is a container, but it's constantly evolving, and we may not know what that container is. So it's not a matter of waiting to find out what the container is. And we may not even have the ability to determine what the container is going to be in which we choose. There's going to be maybe some variability of that. But it's becoming a little bit more proactive, anticipating that we know that we're going to have to constantly be on the lookout. We're going to have to be very observant and listen for all the signs that are changing. But the question is we can't wait until that change happens and then decide what skills do we need to be able to do that. we're going to need these adaptability skills, and there are adaptability skills, or what I call adapt abilities, that make up this adaptability quotient. So to go just roll back the clock maybe a few minutes, you asked me about adaptability quotient. The adaptability quotient was a way to measure that, but it was based on a model called ACE, ACE. And the model was, what are the abilities that people need to adapt, to become better at adapting? We'll come back to that in a second. How does our personality, not that we're going to change anybody's personality, but going back to that self-awareness, how does our personality impact our ability to adapt? How do different personalities look at change differently? And then also the environment. And again, mostly I work with people with employers and organizations. So how do you create an environment that is good, skilled, proficient at adapting or promoting adaptability? Because it's not just businesses want to put the responsibility on individual people. And it's like, oh, it's those darn employees. They don't have that right attitude. They don't have enough grit. They're not resilient. They're not open-minded. They're not innovative. They don't want to learn. So let's put the burden on them to fix it, or somebody else. But the reality is you can hire the best people, and we see this all the time. I'm sure you do. You hire really, really good people who have grit and resilience, and they're growth-minded, and they don't work in the organization because the organization says that's not how we do things around here. Or you're moving too fast, or you can't step on toes, or it's not a safe space. The organization doesn't provide a safe space to raise questions or to ask, why are we doing it that way? Something simple that someone gets defensive is stop asking questions, just follow the rules. We've been doing this for 10 years. Just follow the book. We invested all this time in doing SOPs and operating procedures. Don't mess it up because the boss will get angry and you'll never get anywhere. You hired the right person who had the skills, but the organization screws it up. And other times the organization really does a good job, but they're expecting people to be naturally good just because you give them more money or more perks. So people should naturally have grit and resilience and growth. And that's not the way the world works. That's not the way any of this works. So what I liked about the adaptability quotient was it was based on the model ACE, ACE. And it said, what are the core dimensions that are going to drive individual adaptability, and which ones drive environmental adaptability, create that good container, the container that the water's held in. And then how does the character, how does somebody's, whether you're extroverted or introverted, how might that influence? Doesn't mean you're good or bad, but how might that influence how you perceive or how you attack change? And so when we looked at adaptability, the adaptabilities, I already mentioned three of those. Grit, resilience, and growth-mindedness are three of those. The other two are really interesting. And one is mental flexibility. And mental flexibility is the ability to make sense of contradictory information. And we hear a lot that these days, at least in the US. I know you're in Canada and you probably have listeners around the world, but in the US, we obviously have a divided political perspective, but they're points of view, they're worldviews, and people either watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or Newsmax, and if you turn, it can drive you crazy because if you turn, you go, I saw it with my own eyes, but I hear two different perspectives or four different perspectives sometimes of what's going on. Mental flexibility is the ability to make sense of that. And how do we pick out the common threads? Because they may be saying the same thing, they're just saying it a little differently, or they have a different goal. So we need mental flexibility is the ability to deal with complex information, contradicting information, disinformation, misinformation. To me, that's going to be the toughest one of all the abilities to improve. But so grit, resilience, growth-mindedness is going to help in that mental flexibility, but mental flexibility was identified as a individual dimension that people have to develop. And the fifth one's really, really interesting because we talk about continuous learning. You're in this space. We hear about we need to be continuous learning. We need more education. What you learn in college by the time you graduate sometimes isn't even relevant. I've changed careers. I'm an older baby boomer, and I'm constantly learning new things. But what's important is not learning. Well, learning is important, but as important as learning is unlearning, especially the older you are. And older could be a millennial because millennials are now in their 40s. So they've had 20 years of adulthood, learning some bad habits. The world wasn't what you millennials expected. And even Gen Z, even some older Gen Zs, the last couple of years has been pretty rough. What they expected when they were 16 and going to graduate and getting prepared to finish high school and graduate, they entered a world which didn't exist, and they had to learn new things. And some of the things they were taught, they had to unlearn while they were learning. So the older you get, the more unlearning you have to do. I draw the analogy of that. It's like cleaning out your desk. You go through these things and it's like, why am I saving that? Why am I saving that? And you remove the clutter and you go, I can't get rid of that. I don't want to throw it away, but I'm going to put it back in this box. I'm going to file it in some box somewhere just in case I need to draw upon it. Or, what your hard drive is. We collect all these fragments and all these files and eventually it fills up or your camera and you go, I got to delete these because I have 15 duplicate photos of the same thing. How do I make space?
Yeah.
Well, we need to declutter our brains. We need to unlearn the bad habits. Not that we're saying forget them. They were good experiences and they may come in handy, but we need to basically put them away, not in the forefront, and think about how do we make room for new ways to do things. So the five adaptabilities that it shows that have the greatest influence on change, on our ability to adapt, is grit, resilience, growth mindset, mental flexibility, and unlearning. Now, my personal favorite is growth mindset.
Okay.
And for people who may or may not be familiar with growth mindset, it came from the work of Carol Dweck. This isn't something I made up. She's studied this for years. And people with a fixed mindset, we already referenced some of them. I'm too old. I'm a baby boomer. Why am I learning technology? Why am I studying? Why do I continue to read and want to learn new things? Or I'm too short. I'm too young. I'm the wrong color. I'm the wrong race. I'm the wrong gender. I'm not good at math. It's a real popular one. I'm just not very good at math. Therefore, we'll give you a get out of jail free card. You'll never have to use math again for the rest of your life. No, that's it. Is what can you do to change that? So fixed mindset is a belief that we're born with certain skills and abilities, and there's nothing we can do about it. Growth mindset, and that's an extreme, but growth mindset is we're on a journey. We're constantly learning. We're going to be challenged. Mistakes aren't failures. They're just a step in the path. They're expected. We're going to make a mistake. You wouldn't expect to, I know you coach hockey. You wouldn't expect some 8-year-old or 10-year-old just to hop on the ice and be naturally gifted. Now, every now and then you'll find somebody like that, but it takes practice. And if your attitude comes in just to be that, hey, you're really good. You don't have to work really hard at doing this. If you just tweak it a little bit, you'll be a superstar. Eventually, they're going to meet somebody who practiced every day and they learn the skills and they outthink them. And they get stuck. And we see that all the time. So growth mindset is really that we're just on a journey and we're constantly learning and practicing, and we could become better no matter what we do. Doesn't mean we're going to be a superstar in everything we try, but we can become better and we can become skilled at it, where a fixed mindset is stuck. I don't know how you teach anybody. I don't have this whole concept or the topic of adaptability. I don't know how anyone can be adaptable, or how you can even have more grit, more resilience, more mental flexibility, more learning or unlearning if you don't have a growth mindset.
Let's connect that right there to leaders. We've been talking about the individual contributors here for a little bit, and what is required to be able to adapt in this current climate. The hockey analogy there, water, ice. So we're on the ice. The water's frozen. We're on the ice. A leader can very quickly negatively impact a young athlete who might come to the rink, step on that frozen water with a growth mindset, and through poor leadership, suddenly be scared to make mistakes, be scared to explore new ways of doing things. Just like a leader can invite learn by doing, learn through failure, explore new ways of doing things. What comes to mind when I think about the impact, when I describe the impact that the leader can have on someone who comes with good intentions and an open mind? What do you see in these days?
Using leadership even in the coaching element, we always want to have the best players on the ice. We always want to have the top players out there. But top players, the right mix depends also on the right attitude. So if you have someone who's a hotshot, they're gonna certainly take the shots, except if it makes them look bad. Mm-hmm. So if that hotshot is playing against the best goalie, and I don't understand hockey as well as you do, so you can correct me on this, but I understand sports. And
so
I know
far, so good. Yeah, you're doing great.
So you're playing against the best goalie. And if he knows he's going to take 10 shots and maybe make one or none of those, is that the night he decides to pass it off to other people to make them look bad? So as a coach, it's in a leader, it's understanding is that who are the people that are going to shy away from the biggest challenges? Who are the people that are just going to try to protect their ego and their status and continue to look smart, versus the person who comes off the bench and has been practicing all along, but they're not maybe the overall best talent, but they are good and good enough, and they come in and they become the hero of the game. Because they're willing to take chances. And if they miss the first one, they're willing to take the second one. If they're willing to take the second one, it says, hey, I saw a little bit of an opening. I'm going to try to go, because I saw he moved to the left. I'm going to go to the right this time. And go ahead.
The former that you were describing, the fixed mindset, is like the block of ice that says, "Oh, I can't fit into that ice cube tray over there. I'm just gonna stay here." The growth mindset is, well, if I just melted this side of myself a little bit, I could slide into this new container. Am I hitting the mark there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you're willing to do that. So part of it is attitude, is the willingness to go, as a fixed mindset is, but everybody expects me to be a square ice cube.
Right.
Well, you can have round ice cubes.
Right.
And I go, around? Who wants a round ice cube? I mean,
that's not how we did it when I was a kid. There was only square ice cubes, right?
Right. Or it's a fear of, I don't know how to defend, or I don't know how to play. I don't. How do you get along with the round ice cube? I don't know how to do it. So yeah, I mean, we can go so far with that analogy, but a fixed mindset is, people may relate to this. How many times, and anybody who's been in school, that there was a class or a course or something you really were interested in. Maybe it was a language, maybe it was, something in math or science, or maybe it was even home economics. And you were afraid to take it because either I'm not very good, what will people say, that'll kill my image. And especially in colleges, especially when you need a 4.0 or you need to be on the dean's list to get anywhere, people stop challenging themselves, and they actually start to live their lives by trying to engineer it. What's the safest path to success? And when we had 40 and 50-year careers, people were able to navigate that because that container change so slowly. Today, you're not able to do that. And having that growth mindset saying, I'm going to try this because it's not going to blow my ego. And if people think less of me, I'm going to practice really hard till the point where, how did you learn to play that violin? I didn't know you can do that. I remember when you were just, we had to leave the room when you played. How can you do that? And, our muscle's a brain. Yes. And, you don't expect to show up on the first day and be in shape. It takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes redundancy, and it takes repetition, and it takes deliberation. There's no reason that learning and unlearning and being skilled at whatever we do, whether it's learning a technical skill or learning an adaptability, it takes practice and discipline. And we need people that just aren't, somehow we understand that about sports. We understand that about school. But when it came to our brain and our mindset, we just assumed that we had it or we don't. I'm good at it or I'm not.
The fixed mindset could have developed in a world before we really understood neuroplasticity and the fact that the brain can change and does change. It changes in a single coaching conversation with clients, new ways of thinking that weren't there an hour ago.
Aha moments.
Aha moments, exactly. Let's take the last 5 minutes here to talk about the program that you have created to help leaders and their teams address some of these topics that we've been talking about today.
Oh, absolutely. So we, again, focused on what are the individual abilities. And these are this isn't just with frontline workers. This is for leaders, because leaders are really struggling. In fact, leaders have a higher rate of burnout and stress than a lot of individuals do. So everyone is going to have to improve their AQ, their adaptability quotient. And one way to do that is through growth, is through abilities. I started with growth mindset for all the reasons that I shared just a few minutes ago. I don't know how we develop any of these other skills. I don't even know how you create a better work environment than if we have, if you don't create a growth spirited environment. How do we create better employee experiences, and how do we grow and innovate without that? So I worked with a tech company, and they were working in the educational space, and they were focused on microlearning. And no one wants to, you can't teach anything. People can't learn. You can teach anything in a day or an hour, but you can't learn anything and be proficient at it in that time. So it's done through microlearning. It's little doses when you need it. And so they had developed the technology to drop 3 to 5 to 7 minute snippets every day. This is how you start your day or whenever you're going to do it on some topic. And then the next day, something else happens, and then it gets reinforced. Well, we took that model and we developed it for starting with growth mindset. We have one in the pipeline, which is going to be resilience. And then we're going to be doing grit. And then we're going to actually be going to the leadership side and talking about what do leaders need to do to create better company support and team support and psychologically safe spaces. So we started with the growth mindset. And what happens is it's for 30 days, a short period of time. 21 of those days, people will get a message. They may get a quick article to read. They may get a TED Talk video. We have an exercise called Yet I, and it works like this. I'm not very good at math, yet I will do this. As a premise of growth mindset it's not that I'm not good at math yet. I'm not good at basketball yet. I'm not good at hockey yet. I'm not good at defense yet. And we took it one step further to say, yet I will do something. I will make a change. So we have the Yet I challenge is part of this. So over 30 days, we give people a break. They read something, they think about it. The next day we ask to do a little journal entry or think about somebody that had a growth mindset. And that's what it is. It can be done as standalone, somebody who has that commitment and dedication, or it can be done through coaching. We're working with a lot of other coaches. I don't personally coach, but there's people that are much better at it than I. And we wanted to be able to work with even internally with organizations, have a manager. How do you scale this? How do you get everybody in your organization to participate in this and make it affordable and make it easy? So every day, either by text or on a phone, by email or text, people will get a message. 5 to 7 minutes a day. That's all it takes. Yep. And then hopefully within those organizations or with coaches, they will expand. They will continue that conversation and guide them through it.
Well, I always find the title for the episode of these somewhere in the conversation, and I had a few markers, but and ideas going, but I am not good yet is coming to mind for me now, Ira. Where can people find this program?
I love that. I'm always looking for titles, and sometimes somebody else gives them to me. That's where my millennial trapped in a baby boomer body came from. I walked into a room and they said, "No offense, but we thought you'd be much younger."
Where can people find your program, Ira?
Yeah. So the program I just mentioned could be at aqplusmindset.com. That's aqplusmindset.com. You can also reach out to me. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. And my website is Ira Wolfe with an E, IRAWOLFE.com.
Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure, and I really got a clear sense of this growth mindset, and I'm inspired to take action with some of the people that I lead. Thanks for your time.
Be water, Nate.
Be water.
Thanks for listening to Leading with Curiosity. Please share, follow, and rate the show so that other leaders can make positive change in the world. Connect with Nate at nateleslie.ca. And remember, the brain behaves very differently when encouraged to think rather than told to listen.